Okay, today we're covering Chapter 9, which is creating safe facilities and pest management. When we're looking to build a restaurant, we want to make sure that all the surfaces are smooth and durable. That's going to make it easier to clean, and they've got to stand up to multiple cleanings. So our floors, walls, and ceilings are made from materials that are smooth and durable. You have to maintain them regularly. If we have any leaks in the ceilings, any cracks in the floors or the walls, we've got to make sure those get repaired. And if you take a look at this photograph, we have to have coving where the floors and walls meet. So right here, this is the coving, and it's the piece of tile that has a curved edge to it where it meets the floor. It's a lot easier to clean when that curve is there than if it were just at a 90-degree angle to the floor. And then your floors have to be promptly cleared of any standing water. Any equipment that we use that comes in contact with food, we have cutting boards here in the photograph. They have to be non-absorbent, smooth, and corrosion resistant. Again, you want them to stand up to multiple uses and multiple washings. It's got to be something that's easy to clean, durable, resistant to damage. When we're installing equipment, let's say that in this photograph we have a refrigerator that is a floor refrigerator. If it's mounted on the floor, it has to be either 6 inches off of the floor so we can clean under it easily. Or it has to actually be sealed to a masonry base. On a tabletop, it's a little bit different. We only need 4 inches if it's got legs on it, and it can also be sealed to the countertop. Once it is installed, it has to be maintained regularly. Only qualified people should maintain it. So there are lots of companies out there that have technicians that will come out, check any kind of kitchen equipment that you have, and make sure that it's running smoothly. You set up a schedule with them, and then they check your equipment, just like you're taking your car in for a checkup. And they'll check the levels of the fluids and replace anything that, any type of worn belts or anything like that that might need replacing. Are using a dishwashing machine, you want to have them installed in such a way that they are conveniently located. Having a dishwashing machine in my office would be a really bad place because you have to carry dirty dishes all the way through the lobby and the reception area. It needs to be close to where the prep and service areas are, but it has to be far enough away from the prep area that it keeps the food contact surfaces from becoming contaminated. We use detergents and sanitizers approved by the local regulatory authority. Typically, the manufacturer of the dishwashing unit will supply you with your detergents and sanitizers. Whenever you have a dishwashing machine, make sure that they can measure and display the water temperature, the water pressure, and that you can measure the cleaning and sanitizing chemical concentrations. Post information about the correct settings on the machine. In the photo up here, we have a hot water sanitizing machine. It has a wash temperature of 160 degrees, final rinse of 180 degrees. And that's hot enough to sanitize the dishes as they go through the machine. Then it's got the water pressure and the conveyor belt speed. When it comes to cleaning your dishwashing machine, do that as often as necessary. There are filters throughout the machine that will collect any food stuff that was not scraped off ahead of time. follow manufacturer recommendations on cleaning, and follow local regulatory requirements. So a dishwasher is something that a health inspector will look at when they come through, making sure that it is clean inside. We also have pot washing sinks. We call those 3-compartment sinks. There's a wash sink, a rinse sink, and a sanitizer sink. You want to make sure that those are large enough to hold large equipment and utensils. Large equipment, you should also have a different method for cleaning them, such as cleaning them in place. Some big things cannot be lifted and put in or submerged in water. Your hand washing stations have to be conveniently located. They have to be in your restrooms or directly next to the restrooms. They have to be in the food prep areas, in the service areas where your servers will be getting beverages for the guests and handling their checks and taking the dirty dishes. And then also the dishwashing areas need a hand sink. Hand sinks are only used for hand washing. If they're in a prep area, they need to have a divider on them so you're not splashing contaminants onto food prep areas. They have to be available at all times, so we don't shove things into a hand sink. We don't put carts around it so that you can't reach them. They have to be accessible all times. There are 5 components to a hand washing station. The first is hot and cold running water. The second is soap. The third is a way to dry hands. So either a single-use paper towel, as shown here, or an air dryer, whether it's hot or high-speed air. You need a garbage container, and you need a sign that reminds employees to wash their hands before returning to work. The water and plumbing that we have in the kitchen, it has to be drinkable. Another word for that is potable. You get that potable water from approved public water mains, from regularly tested and maintained private sources. So you might have a well on your property that is your source of water. Closed portable water containers, so anything from a water bottle like this, and they come in all kinds of sizes, gallons and 2.5 gallons and 5-gallon containers. And then finally, water transport vehicles, which you typically only see in an emergency when there's large groups of people that have no access to fresh water. For your water and plumbing, if you're using an on-site septic system, make sure it is properly tested and maintained. Most places in a city or a larger area will have a sewage system where the wastewaters from the building are taken to a facility in that area and they're treated before they're returned back to the environment. But some more rural places are going to have a septic system, which is their own private tank that does the same job. So you have to make sure that it's tested and maintained. You don't even want to have licensed plumbers work on your plumbing. One major thing we need to be concerned about with the plumbing is a cross connection. That's a physical link between safe water and dirty water. It can come from your floor drains, from sewers, or other wastewater sources. The concern with a cross connection is called backflow, and that's the reverse flow of contaminants through a cross connection into the drinkable water supply. So we have an example here where there's a hose attached to our faucet and it is actually submerged into looks like a mop bucket. And what can happen is that the water pressure can change and actually get lower, and then the water, the dirty water from the mop bucket can get pulled back up and into our clean water supply. So that could be a very easy way to make people sick. So to avoid that, we have two things that we can do. There's a device called a vacuum breaker that you can put onto the faucet that will help prevent that backflow from occurring when the water pressure drops. But you won't necessarily know if that fails. So what is typically done is we have an air gap, and that's 100% guaranteed that there is no water, if it backs up from the floor, that it could possibly get into a pot sink or whatever type of sink that we're using, and then an air gap from the source of water to the top of the sink. Grease buildup in pipes is very common in a restaurant. So we have things called grease traps. Those things have to be installed by a licensed plumber, easy to access, and cleaned on a regular basis. The lighting in our restaurant, things that we need to think about. All of the lights should have shatter-resistant light bulbs or protective covers. If a light bulb should pop or explode, you don't want glass all over the place. When you're changing the bulbs, make sure you're using the correct size for the unit that you have. Different areas of the facility have different lighting requirements. Typically, the food prep area has to be the brightest so that you can see the food that you're working with and look for physical contaminants. Your ventilation systems, these are the hoods that are over the ovens and stoves in the kitchen. They improve air quality by reducing the temperature in the kitchen, taking all that hot, smoky air out of the building, reducing grease and condensation buildup on the walls. We have to clean them and maintain them on a regular basis. What we do is, if you look in this part of the picture, there are filters inside the hood that are easily removed. They can be run through a dishwasher and then easily reinstalled. Let me go back. From the filters up to the roof and above the roof, you typically have a maintenance company come in and inspect those, clean those on every 6 months. Our garbage, we want to make sure we remove garbage from prep areas as quickly as possible, being careful not to contaminate food and food contact surfaces. So this employee is doing something very wrong by putting a bag of trash on top of a food prep table. You want to clean the inside and outside of the garbage can containers frequently, and you want to do that in a space away from your food prep and storage areas. So you typically have a janitor's closet, or you might have a hose set up outside with a drain that you can clean your trash cans. Your indoor trash containers have to be leak-proof, waterproof, and pest-proof. Something that's easy to clean. They're covered when they're not in use. Included with a cover in women's restrooms. And then your designated storage areas outside of the building, you want to store those away from food and food contact surfaces. And then the storage must not create a nuisance or a public health hazard. Let's see what's coming next here. Okay, so I want to say a couple more things while we're here. So these lids have to be closed and tight fitting. You don't want pests crawling into there and making a home in your trash bins. You also want them on a smooth concrete or asphalt surface. You don't want to displace them on top of dirt. They also have a drain plug near the bottom of them, because you will have trash that leaks and starts to collect at the bottom of the trash bin. So you occasionally we'll hose these out, open the drain plug, let that water drain out, and then put the drain plug back in place. Okay, do this. You want them covered at all times, okay. To prevent food safety problems due to the facility, you want to make sure you clean the whole operation on a regular basis. Check your building systems regularly. Maintain the building. So if we have cracks in our walls, going to make sure we fill up the mortar there so that pests cannot get into the building. Any type of leaks, holes, cracks in the floors, foundations, ceilings, or windows, you want to make sure those are repaired quickly. Maintain the outside, including patios and your parking lots, and control pests. So emergencies that can affect the facility. An imminent health hazard is a significant threat or danger to health. Requires immediate correction or closure to prevent injury. So possible imminent health hazards. Power outages and refrigeration failures. Security issues. A fire. Water supply problems. If you can't get potable water into your building, that's a huge problem for food safety. And also floods and sewage backups. What do we do if there's a crisis affecting the facility? Determine if there is a significant risk to the safety or security of your food. And I would also add your employees and your guests. So if there's a fire, you want to get everybody out as soon as possible. If the risk is significant, stop service, notify the local regulatory authority. Once you can, throw away any food that possibly became contaminated and any food that is in package that was damaged. So how to respond to a crisis that affects the facility. Decide how we're going to correct the problem. First thing we need to do is establish time temperature control of our food. So if we've lost power and it's going to be out for a long period of time, we either have to get a generator hooked up or we have to transport that food someplace where it can be stored safely. You want to clean and sanitize all the surfaces in your operation. Reestablish physical security of the facility. If windows were broken during a storm or somebody drives a car into your restaurant, you want to make sure that that is secured. You have windows boarded up so that you don't have to worry about creatures or people coming into your building when you're not around. Verify that water is drinkable. Typically, your water provider will be able to tell you if the water is safe. Regardless of how the problem is corrected, you will need approval from the local health department before you can continue service. Okay, we have 3 rules of pest prevention. First, we want to deny pest access to the operation. We talked about making sure we fix any type of openings, breakages to prevent pests from getting into the building. We also want to deny pest food, water, and shelter, and work with a licensed pest control operator. So denying pest shelter inside your building, throw out garbage quickly and correctly. Maintain garbage containers and storage areas, keep them clean and in good condition. Keep the outdoor containers tightly covered and clean up any type of spills really anywhere in your building immediately. Store your recycles correctly. They need to be in clean, pest-proof containers, and those containers need to be kept as far away from the building as regulations allow. Also, you want to make sure when you're storing your food, you do it quickly and correctly. Keep the products away from the walls at least 6 inches off the floor. Rotate products using the first in, first out method so that pests don't have the opportunity to settle in and breed in your own ingredients. Clean up all food and beverage spills immediately. Denying pests access whenever your food is being delivered. Inspect them for possible contamination. This bag here is torn. It looks like it was actually chewed. So if you have signs of that or any other type of pest infestation, you would refuse a shipment. Make sure all of the points where pests can access the building are secure. So oftentimes plumbing, especially if there had been work done recently, there might be a gap in the wall where the pipes are. You have to make sure that that gets sealed up. Make sure any screen windows and vents that you have are secure, and install self-closing doors and something called air curtains. And what an air curtain is a device that when you open up a door, it's installed at the top of the door, and a high-speed fan blows air straight down when the door is open, and that prevents flying insects from coming into the building. Check with your pest control operator immediately if you see any other pest-related problems. So if you have something in your storage and it gets chewed through and you see rodent droppings inside there, that's a reason to contact them. If you see what could be nest materials, rodents like nice, soft, cushy nests, so they'll go ahead and gather those materials to make the nests. Any damage that you might see on the products. Rodents also need to gnaw. Their teeth would grow incredibly long if they didn't gnaw on things. So you might see evidence of gnawing on wooden things that are in your building. That's a sign of having rodents. Anything that's used to kill pests needs to be handled by a certified pest control operator. Okay, so a little quiz here. We have 3 things that we've learned about: cross-connection, cross-contact, and cross-contamination. And when we matched to A, B, and C, first thing we learned about was cross-contamination, and that has to deal with pathogens being transferred from one surface to another. So that turns out to be letter A. Cross-contact deals with allergens. So it's similar to cross-contamination, but we're talking about allergens. So that's going to be letter B. And then finally, in this chapter, we talked about cross-connection, which is a physical connection between contaminated and potable water. All right, and that's the end of chapter 9.